welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book Neither One Nor the Other, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. The afternoon sun cast long shadows along the cobblestone streets of Rio de Janeiro in March 1860, when an old man from Minas Gerais stepped into the Hotel Ravat. He had just arrived that same day from the port of Spain, tired but determined, and he brought a companion with him. Together, they checked into one of the hotel's modest rooms and quickly set about restoring their strength with a hearty dinner. The older man looked to be about 50, and I say that not to offend any man of that age who still feels young. Though he had come from a place known for its calm climate, his body seemed worn out. He didn't look like a particularly smart man, but there was something firm in his face, a clear sign of strong will. Tall and a bit thin, with hair completely white, he carried himself with a certain cheerfulness. Ever since arriving in the capital, he had been enjoying the company of his servant, who was seeing Rio for the very first time and couldn't hide his amazement at everything. After dinner, master and servant sat down to talk. Their conversation was warm and open, the kind of honest talk typical of people from Minas Gerais, something many who know the region deeply appreciate. They first went over the events of their long trip, laughed at how little the servant knew about Rio, and then finally turned to the reason the master had come all this way. "Tomorrow, Jose," the master said, "we need to start looking for my nephew. I won't leave here without him." "Oh, Captain," replied the servant, "I think it's going to be really hard to find your nephew in such a big city. We'd probably have to stay here for a whole year." "A whole year? Don't be silly. All I need to do is put an ad in the Jornal do Comércio. If that doesn't work, it'll go straight to the police. I will find him." "Do you remember him at all?" the captain asked after a pause. "Not really. I only saw him once, and that was a long time ago." "But don't you think he was a good-looking boy?" "He was, back then." "Well, he must be even better looking now." The captain smiled as he said that, but Jose didn't see it. And even if he had, he probably wouldn't have understood it. That's the same thing that happens to readers. They miss the meaning behind the smile. And with that, the conversation ended. The next day, right after lunch, Captain Ferreira's first move was to place an advertisement in the Jornal do Comércio. It read, "Wishing to locate Mr. Vicente Ferreira, regarding a matter of interest to him." Once the ad was placed, our captain allowed himself a moment of rest and waited for a reply. But against his hopes, no answer came the next day. So he placed the same ad again. And again, nothing came of it. Captain Ferreira repeated the advertisement for 8 straight days, without making any progress. Then he had it printed in larger letters, hoping for better luck. But still, silence followed. At last, he became convinced that his nephew wasn't in Rio de Janeiro. "We made this trip for nothing," the captain told his servant. "Let's go back to Mar de Espanha." The servant was clearly happy at the idea of returning home, but the old man seemed deeply sad. To distract himself from his gloom, the captain decided to take a walk after lunch and headed toward the public promenade. As he passed along Rua do Passeio, he thought he saw a man who looked like his nephew enter a building nearby. The old man quickened his pace and reached the hallway entrance just in time, but found no one there. Whoever it was had already gone upstairs. What could he do now? He thought about waiting by the door, but it was possible he'd been mistaken. That kind of wait would be not only boring, but pointless. Then he had an idea. He clapped his hands loudly. Sure enough, someone came down the stairs after a moment. A young man who looked about 25 opened the gate. As soon as the captain saw him, he shouted with all the strength he had left in his lungs. "Vicente." "Who is it?" the young man asked. Without answering, the captain climbed the stairs and reached the landing, shouting as he went. "Don't you recognize your own uncle, you ungrateful boy?" Saying that, he threw his arms around the young man. The boy hugged his uncle warmly, though with a hint of shyness that the captain failed to notice. Vicente gestured for his uncle to follow him into the living room. "Come in here, uncle," he said. They walked in together. If the uncle had been more observant, he might have noticed a woman's dress disappearing down an inner hallway just as he entered. But Captain Ferreira was too focused on his nephew and too happy to finally find him to notice anything else. "Well, thank God I found you," he said, sitting down on a chair that Vicente offered. "When did you get here?" "About 10 days ago," Vicente replied. "I didn't know where you lived, so I put an ad in the Journal do Comércio every day. But it didn't work." "You didn't see the ad?" "No, uncle, I don't read newspapers." "You don't read newspapers?" "No, sir." "Well, that's smart. But this time it would have been helpful if you had." "Of course, I should have told you to look for it, but I didn't know where you were." "You're right," Vicente said with a smile. "Well, I think you're looking good," the captain said. "You look much better than the last time you came to the farm." "That must have been about 5 years ago." "More or less," Vicente answered. "Everything is fine back home, but people miss you. Why on earth don't you come back?" "Uncle, I've been very busy." "Yes, I believe you." "I bet you're learning to play the piano," the captain said, pointing at the instrument in the corner of the room. "Me?" Vicente asked. "No, it's not me. It's a friend." "A friend who lives here with you?" "Exactly." "Well, you live very nicely. I might even come stay here for a few days before going back to Minas." Vicente suddenly turned pale. If the reader has even a little bit of understanding, they will realize that this sudden paleness had something to do with the woman's dress seen earlier. He didn't answer his uncle's suggestion at all. The uncle was the first to speak again, trying to ease the tension. "But why bother?" he said. "I won't stay long enough for it to matter. And besides, your friend might not like it." "It's a bit unusual," Vicente said. "There you go. Well, I'm unusual too, so we wouldn't get along. No point in trying." Vicente sat by the window, watching the street below with little interest. The afternoon light was fading, and the usual noise of the city filled the air. He had just finished a long day of work, and was thinking about dinner when his uncle arrived. "I need to talk to you about something important," said Captain Ferreira, his voice low but firm. "That's the only reason I came to Rio." "Of a business deal?" Vicente asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," the older man replied. "But not now. We don't have time." Let's talk later. Will I see you at Ravat's place tonight? Vicente asked. I'll be there, his uncle said. But listen, why don't you come have dinner with me first? I'd love to, uncle. Great. Come on, let's go now. I can't just yet, Vicente explained. I'm waiting for my friend. But I'll meet you there in time for dinner. All right. Just don't be late. No, sir, Vicente promised. The captain gave his nephew a warm hug and left, clearly happy. As soon as he stepped outside, Vicente went back to the room and stood by the window again. He was deep in thought when someone touched his shoulder from behind. He turned around and saw a young woman standing there, wearing a soft blue dress. She had a playful smile on her face. Where did that uncle come from? She asked, curious. From Minas Gerais, Vicente replied. I didn't expect him. I have to go eat with him tonight. Oh, really? She said, pretending to be upset. I'm sorry. But his family. All right, fine, she said with a laugh. I'll let you go this time. But do me a favor and send him back to Minas soon. I will, he said. As soon as I can. And true to his word, Vicente kept his promise. Captain Ferreira, already growing restless despite the early hour, paced back and forth between the window and the center of the room. He kept looking out, hoping to spot his nephew. At that very moment, Vicente walked into the hotel room. A hotel servant had just led him there. He entered quietly and found his uncle about to turn toward the window. Where in the world did you come from? The captain asked in surprise. The front door, Vicente answered with a grin. That's strange. I didn't hear you come in. Well, here I am, Vicente said, dropping into a chair. His uncle looked at him, amused and pleased. It's time to eat, the captain said. Let's have dinner. Then we can talk about that business I mentioned. Vicente, as usual, was cheerful and full of energy. He laughed easily and filled the room with his presence, just as he always did. Vicente's unexpected encounter with his uncle at the house on Rua do Paseo had left him shy and unsure of himself. But now, with no reason to feel awkward or hesitant, he let his cheerful nature shine through. The uncle, Captain Ferreira, was more than happy to see it. He didn't have that annoying habit of expecting young men to act like old men. He liked people for who they were, no matter their age or personality. After dinner, the captain took his nephew to his room. That was where he wanted to have the serious talk that had brought him all the way to the capital. First things first, the old man began. Let me scold you for staying away from home for so long. You used to come at least once a year. What in the world have you been doing here all this time? My uncle, replied Vicente, I've just been very busy. Important matters, I suppose. Not important. Just boring. I see. Are you working? Yes, I have a job at a trading company. It pays a little, and I live off that plus the small inheritance I got from my mother. You mean the 20,000 rei? That's not much, maybe even nothing. It's all still there. To be honest, said the uncle, I didn't think you were that careful with money. But why didn't you take some time off and come visit me at the farm? In the trade business, it's not easy. Well then, forget the job. You can always leave that behind. At the farm, there's always a place for family. Vicente didn't answer right away. The captain kept going. And that's exactly why I came here to talk to you. Oh, said Vicente, his eyes widening. I bet you're going to say numero. Say no? But, yeah. You don't seem too excited, and I'd feel the same if I were you. But this isn't just about leaving the city to hide away on a farm. For a young man like you, that kind of change can be tough. It's hard meat to chew. But I brought the sauce to make it go down easier. As he said that, the captain looked straight into his nephew's eyes, hoping to see curiosity mixed with joy. He saw the curiosity, but not the joy. Still, he didn't let it shake him. Your father, he continued, my brother, asked me to look after you and make sure you'd be happy. Vicente sat on the edge of his chair, eyes wide, unsure if he had heard right. His uncle, Captain Lobo, leaned back with a satisfied grin, the kind that comes from someone who's just dropped a surprise and waits for it to land. I've kept my word, the old man began, his voice calm but firm. When you wanted to stay in Rio instead of coming with me to the farm, I didn't push. And when you said you needed a job, the one you have now, that came from me. Vicente blinked. It's true, but I never imagined. Ah, so you thought I didn't know about your position? No, numero uno, the one who got it for you. And more than that, I've kept track of how you behave at work. They told me you're a model employee. I even asked your boss to give you some time off, more than once. He probably mentioned it, didn't he? And you turned it down. Vicente lowered his head slightly. Yes, uncle. I did. I saw no reason to push, the captain said, tapping his knee again. I understand, young men. The city has its charms. The sweet life of Rio the Delicious de Capua, as Father Tusta would say. It's easy to get caught up in it. Vicente couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had no idea his uncle had been behind so much of his life. And yet, the captain spoke without anger or blame. He was just an old man who understood youth and forgave it everything. But now, the captain continued, the time has come to make you happy in a new way. Vicente frowned. What do you mean? The old man smiled. The oldest way in the world. Marriage. The word hit Vicente like a cold wave. He hadn't expected that. Of all the things he thought his uncle might say, money, a trip, even a new job, this was the last. What marriage? He asked, trying to sound calm. Captain Lobo didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch, enjoying the moment. Vicente tried to speak, to say something polite but firm, something that would stop this idea before it grew. But he couldn't find the words. Finally, the captain asked, So, what do you think? Vicente took a deep breath. I think, uncle, he said slowly, choosing his words with care, that you are very kind to think of my happiness. And yes, marriage as well. It's what people usually do. It makes sense. So I accept your idea. With all my heart. The old man was smiling with satisfaction and was about to hug his nephew when Vicente finished speaking. But, Vicente added, the problem is my wife. Right now, I don't love anyone. You don't love anyone? The old man repeated, lying back on the couch. So you thought I came all the way to Rio de Janeiro just to suggest marriage? I bring two things: the idea of marriage and the woman herself. You don't love her? Well, you will. Because she already loves you. Vicente shivered. The situation had suddenly become more complicated. At the same time, the idea that someone loved him without him knowing or doing anything to deserve it fed his pride in a way he couldn't deny. Caught between these conflicting feelings, the young man hesitated, unsure how to respond. The woman I have chosen for you, the one who loves you, is my daughter, Delphina. Oh, my cousin? But she's still a child. She was 5 years ago. Now she's 17, and I believe that's the perfect age for marriage. So, will you accept? My uncle, Vicente replied. I would gladly accept your idea. Although I understand how advantageous this union could be, I still don't want to make a young woman unhappy. And that's exactly what might happen if I don't love my wife. Will you beat her? The old man asked. Oh, forgive me, Vicente said, not hiding his irritation at the question. But not loving someone who loves you, that alone makes her unhappy. Nonsense, the old man said, standing up and walking around the room. Love in marriage is just a myth. All that matters is mutual respect and affection. That's what I expect, nothing more. Think about it. In exchange, I will give you all my fortune. I know that's not the most important thing for you, but having a beautiful wife and Delphina is a gem. Gentle, kind, and easy to get along with. That's a gift that only a fool or a reckless man would turn down. I didn't say I would turn it down. A fool or a reckless man like you. A reckless man who left a good job and a business just because of a silly whim, a simple misunderstanding with the owner. Captain Ferreira stared at his nephew, eyes wide with disbelief. You think I wouldn't find out? My boy, I know everything. That's exactly why you had no idea I'd arrive. Tell me, at least you're still working? I am, the young man stammered. The old man was already furious from Vicente's stubbornness and couldn't hold back any longer. He told him everything he knew. Vicente, who thought his uncle, still unaware of his leaving the house had been staying at, took the news like a punch to the gut. The captain resumed his pacing in silence. Vicente remained seated, saying nothing. After a few minutes, the captain returned to his chair and said, Don't be foolish, boy. Listen to me. This is for your own good. Your cousin is in love with you. Vicente looked up, surprised. I found out only when Colonel Vieira's son came to ask for her hand. She told him straight, she'd marry only you. And since I adore her, I want to make her happy. So come on, don't make me wait. Decide now. My uncle, Vicente said after a pause, I can't give you a final answer right now. But I promise you, anything I can do, I will do. Should I really trust your word? Why not? You want to know why? Because I suspect you're out there wasting your time, doing who knows what, like so many young men these days. Oh, believe me, I don't need your oaths. I need your answer. Captain Ferreira was a man of strong will. He didn't tolerate refusal, and he never proposed something like this without being certain of his right to do so. Until then, Vicente had lived independently of his uncle's influence. It was only natural he'd never counted on the man's fortune. Now, for the captain to try to force a marriage in this way was to risk everything, offending the young man's pride. But the old man didn't see it that way. He was deeply surprised when his nephew replied sharply, "Well then, my answer is simple. I won't get married." A heavy silence followed those words. The captain stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. "You won't marry her?" he finally asked, after a long, unbearable pause. Vicente shook his head numero. Vicente looked at his uncle and asked, "Did you really think about what you just said?" "I did," the old man replied. "Then goodbye." With that, the old man stood up and walked to his room without even glancing at Vicente. Vicente understood he was being sent away and left the room. When he got home, Clara was already there. She was the young woman we met in the first chapter. She hugged him, but her embrace carried a silent question. "I argued with my uncle," Vicente said as he sat down. "Oh no," Clara whispered. "Can you guess what he wanted?" "To send you away." "No. He wanted me to marry his daughter and become his heir." "And you refused?" "I did." Clara dropped to her knees in front of him and kissed his hands. "What are you doing, Clara?" "Thank you," she said softly. Vicente pulled her up and kissed her hands in return. "You silly girl. Why on earth are you thanking me? And crying too. Clara, stop crying. I hate seeing a girl cry like this. Come on, smile." Clara sat down quietly. Her face showed joy, but it was mixed with sadness. "Who knows?" she said after a while. "Maybe you did the right thing by refusing. Now what are you saying?" "You refused because of me and I shouldn't have brought it up. Let's forget it. No more silly talk. Go out for a walk or something." After his mother passed away, Vicente Ferreira left the countryside of São Paulo, where he had lived, and moved to Rio de Janeiro with what little he had inherited. For some time he worked thanks to his uncle's help, who truly cared for him. Vicente was proud, and he felt that living with his uncle made him look like someone chasing after his uncle's money. That was something he always tried to avoid. When he lived in São Paulo, he often visited his uncle. But after moving to the city, he never went back. Besides the feelings we've already mentioned, he didn't want to leave his job, even if his boss, who was also his uncle, had offered him time off. And finally, there was Clara from Rua do Passeio, who played a big part in Vicente's decision to stay away. Why did Clara have such a hold over him? And how had it all begun? Let's quickly clear up a thought that might already be forming in the reader's mind, the idea that our Clara was a Margaritoria, trying to wash away her past. Sins in the waters of love. No, Clara had been taken from her parents' home by a friend of Vicente's, or at least someone who often went around with him. Then, after a month, she was left behind, abandoned by that scoundrel, who then boarded a ship to Buenos Aires. One morning, she woke up alone, with no support and no hope. Her first thought was to end her life. This decision was driven mostly by the love she still felt for the young man. But fear, along with the religious upbringing she had received, quickly pushed such a thought away. Amid her pain, she remembered Vicente. He had once visited her house in the company of the now fugitive Aeneas. She sent for him and told him everything. Vicente hadn't yet heard about his friend's escape, and he was shocked that Aeneas would commit such a cowardly act. Learning that, legally, the kidnapper had nothing to fear, Vicente was even more surprised by his sudden flight. There had to be another reason, beyond the kidnapping itself. After all, a man who steals a woman usually has the nerve to keep her for more than just a month, long enough for the escape to complete the act of abduction. Boldness followed by a cowardice, that was the story here. But 1 month was never enough time. So there had to be something else behind it. That same day, Vicente started asking questions, but found nothing. The next day, though, a small note in the Journal do Comercio cleared things up. It reported that the man had fled with a large sum of money. To finish his story once and for all, let it be added that, after many similar escapades in Buenos Aires, he fled again, this time to Chile, where it said he now works on railway projects. Clara told Vicente exactly what her situation was, and begged him as an act of charity to help her. Vicente was a kind man. He knew that scolding Clara wouldn't help her now. What she needed was support. So, instead of giving her a lecture, he gave her money. He took 1 conto de reis from his own savings and used it to help her get back on her feet. He rented her a small house, hired a maid, and bought some basic furniture. Then he said goodbye. Clara was grateful, but also ashamed. She accepted everything he offered, yet she believed his help came only from a sense of duty. She didn't see love in his actions, just obligation. 15 days later, Vicente returned to her home. He told her he couldn't keep helping her forever. He explained that she needed to find a way to support herself. He encouraged her to choose a job she liked. Clara agreed. She decided to work as a seamstress for a local dressmaker. Within days, she had a job. But after that, Vicente never came back to visit. From time to time, she would send him a message always about small things. Things that didn't require him to come see her in person. Still, his silence began to change how she saw him. She started to question the idea that he was only doing his duty. Maybe there was more to him than she had thought. Then one day, Vicente got sick. When Clara heard about it, she asked her boss for time off and went to take care of him. She stayed by his side like a sister, maybe even more devoted. He was ill for about 10 or 12 days, and during that time she never stopped caring for him. "Thank you," Vicente said when he finally got out of bed. "For what?" she asked. "It's I who should be thanking you." "You've already paid me back," he replied. "Oh, never," Clara said. "You saved my life, yes. But you did more than that. You saved me from a terrible path." "And that's enough," Vicente said gently. Clara looked away and wiped a tear from her eye. "Why are you crying?" Vicente asked. Clara didn't answer, but she lifted her eyes to him, filled with tears. They must have looked very expressive at that moment, because the young man smiled and said softly, "Do you love me, don't you?" Clara kissed his hand. The next day, Clara said goodbye to her seamstress, and the couple began living together in the house on Rua do Paseo, the same one we've already seen. It's only fair to say that Vicente didn't fall in love with the girl right away. But love came slowly, like a cool night breeze that starts weaker than a baby's breath and grows into a strong wind. Clara was pretty and had a kind heart. Vicente's personality fit perfectly with hers. Both found happiness in inner peace, mutual affection, hard work, and a simple life. They had found all of that. So why would they give it up? The incident with Captain Uncle was just a passing cloud in Vicente's life. After 15 days, it was completely forgotten. Even Clara, despite the sadness the captain's proposal had caused her, no longer thought about him. Everything seemed to return to how it was before. And that's exactly how things stayed for 3 whole months. But by the end of June, Vicente received a letter. It said that Delfina's health required him to come to the farm. The letter didn't sound like a command, or even a plea. It was just a simple request. Vicente felt deeply moved by his uncle's letter. He felt guilty, as if something bad might have happened because of him. He needed to stop any harm, if harm had been done. That's what he decided to do. But this decision didn't last long. Although Vicente understood how serious the situation was, he couldn't forget that there had been a proposal still in the air. Maybe going to the farm would only speed up something that he deeply feared. In the end, Vicente chose not to go to the farm. Clara didn't know what was going on this time, and everything seemed to stay the same for a while. But many days later, when Vicente came home, he found her sad, with clear signs that she had been crying. "What's wrong?" he asked. "What's wrong?" she repeated. "Yes, you seem upset." "I am upset. It feels like I don't matter to you anymore." "Why do you say that?" "You got a letter from your uncle and didn't tell me anything about it." "That's true. I didn't want to hurt you." "How did you know about the letter?" "I found it today." "Well then," Vicente said, "I did get the letter, and I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make you suffer. And you see, it didn't matter, since I didn't leave anyway." "You did the wrong thing." "I did the wrong thing?" "You should have gone to the farm." Vicente frowned. "Clara," he said, "don't you love me?" "Me? Oh, how unfair you are. Of course I love you, very much. But what does that have to do with a father's simple request? His asking you to save his daughter." "Save her? That sounds too dramatic." "You don't believe in love." "I guess I don't, Clara. I can't believe that a girl I last saw as a child could feel so much for me, that she would die from it. The heart has its secrets. Let's talk about something else." "No," Clara said. "Let's keep talking about this. You should go to Minas." Vicente made a face, showing he didn't like where this was going. "Don't get angry," she said. "Go to Minas, stay there long enough to help calm that poor girl down, and then come back. Please, won't you go?" Vicente looked at her with suspicion. Behind her words, he thought, there was something hidden. For the first time, he felt jealous. Maybe Clara saw it in his eyes, because she stood up from her chair and gave him a look so strong, so honest, that he felt ashamed. "I know what you're thinking, Clara," he said. "You think I won't go because of you. You don't want to feel guilty for hurting someone else." "And if that were true?" she asked. "That would be noble of you," he replied. Clara smiled, but it was a sad smile. Vicente looked at Clara and asked, Do you think it's right? I think it's only fair, she replied. What right do I have to hurt a poor girl's heart? Clara, you don't love me, he said, because love isn't kind like that. They stopped talking. Dinner was quiet and sad. Both of them were thinking hard. The truth was, Clara's words had hit Vicente. He began to understand that he couldn't be forced into marriage. But he also thought that by staying at the farm, maybe he could help his cousin feel better. That night, he decided to go to Mar de España. He planned to leave in 2 days. Clara was happy when she heard. What pain you are taking away from me, she said. Go, and I promise I will pray to God for you, for her, and for our happiness. The next day, Vicente started getting ready for the trip. He bought what he needed and was walking down Rua do with his bag when he saw someone near the door of the Europa Hotel on Rua do Carmo. It was the captain, talking to someone inside a carriage. Vicente stopped. A few seconds later, a tall but weak and pale girl stepped out. He recognized her at once, Delfina. She went into the hotel, followed by her father. Vicente stood there for a moment, then continued walking toward Rua do Paseo, with his slave carrying the now useless bag behind him. He told Clara what he had seen. This time, Clara shivered like someone who had just seen danger right in front of her. Still, she said, well then, even better. Instead of going to Mar de España, you should go to the Europa Hotel. It's closer, and I want to know how things will end today. It was the most natural thing to do. Vicente went. When he arrived, Delfina was still resting after the trip. But the captain greeted him calmly, almost cheerfully. My uncle, said Vicente, I was supposed to leave tomorrow. I had my bag with me just now when I saw you come in here, and my cousin too. It's been so long since I wrote to you, said the old man sadly. Yes, it's true. But I couldn't come sooner as I wanted. Work got in the way, and only now could I get away. Delfina wasn't in the room. Vicente needed to ask about her, even though he hated lying. It was the only way he could handle the situation. The old man didn't seem suspicious. He answered calmly, she's resting. Is she sick? Vicente asked after a short pause. She is, the captain said. I want to get a doctor's opinion. Vicente felt trapped. He had prepared arguments to soften his uncle's plans, but now the old man seemed far away from that topic, avoiding it completely. After a long silencio that made Vicente deeply uncomfortable, Delfina finally walked in. She looked pale and weak. Her face showed signs of long, quiet suffering. Yet, she was beautiful. Her beauty shone, untouched by time or pain. If anything, her paleness made her even more striking. Some women shine with color. Others, like Delfina, stood out because of their lack of it. Her eyes were dark and deep, slightly tired but still full of emotion. Her hair, just as dark, was neatly styled, framing a high, thoughtful forehead. When she entered, Vicente couldn't hide his surprise. Not just because she looked so ill, but because he saw for the first time how beautiful she had become. He remembered her as a child, not as the woman standing before him. Delfina, on the other hand, let out a soft cry. Her father rushed to her side. Vicente stood up and quickly walked over, offering his hand. She took it firmly and looked straight into his eyes. That look said everything: anger, gratitude, love. It lasted only a few seconds, but it held more than words ever could. "Sit down, daughter," the captain finally said. A good writer must understand their characters deeply. So let me say this about Vicente. If his heart had been free, if he hadn't already made promise, would have said right then, "Prima, I'm here. I'll be your husband." And honestly, that promise would have meant more than any doctor's opinion, no matter how famous or skilled. Vicente wasn't free inside. For him to say those words out loud, he needed to have no fixed or constant thought in his heart, especially not the thought of Clara. But Delfina, like anyone drowning, grabbed the smallest piece of rock she could find and filled herself with hope that her love would finally be rewarded. That day, Vicente had dinner with his uncle and cousin. He tried to seem cheerful because someone had to comfort the sick girl. But his mind was full of the strange situation fate had thrown at him. The captain, even though he didn't really believe or expect anything from his nephew, let himself imagine for a moment that maybe everything could still be saved. If the boy's doubt, he thought, is only that he doesn't love the girl yet, maybe he can learn to love her. If he sees her more often, if he gets used to being near her, maybe he'll change. Not all is lost. This small hope made the evening with the three of them bearable. At night, Vicente said goodbye, promising to return the next day. As he left, he met his close friend Correa, the one person he told everything to. Clara also trusted Correa completely. "You living at the Europa Hotel now?" Correa asked. "No," Vicente said. "I came to see my uncle and cousin. They just got here from Minas today." They walked together down Rua do Ouvidor, arm in arm. But Vicente looked sad, and Correa gave his arm a shake. "What the hell is wrong with you? You look like you saw a witch." "Correa," Vicente said, "I'm in a real mess." Correa leaned in, ready to listen. Vicente told him everything. Correa heard the whole story carefully and agreed. This was one of the most serious situations a young man could face. "So, what do you think I should do?" Vicente asked. "Several things," Correa said. "First, get married." "No way," Vicente cut in. "Okay," Correa went on. "Then make another clear refusal." "That would kill her." "Third idea," Correa said. "Say nothing. Don't confirm anything. Don't make any promises." Captain Ferreira had left the Europa Hotel and moved into a modest apartment on Rua dos Invalidos. Around the same time, he called in a doctor to look after his daughter. But I must say he placed more hope in the presence of his nephew than in any medicine or diagnosis. He believed that Delfina's recovery would come not from pills or treatments, but from seeing Vicente nearby. At the same time, he secretly hoped that she might have a softening effect on the young man's heart, nudging him toward a decision that would bring peace to them all. No need for force or drama, just time, proximity, and feeling. Vicente didn't stop visiting his uncle's house. He spent long hours there, often staying for dinner, and sometimes not leaving until late at night. Wherever he went, he seemed to bring joy. At his uncle's home, The atmosphere lifted when he arrived. At his own house the same. And Clara, his close friend, was the one who most often urged him not to let time pass without visiting. One evening, as they sat together in Vicente's home, Corrao had become something of a guide in life's messier questions, offered his thoughts again. You know, Correa began, imagine you've just been named ambassador, and your government tells you to fill a whole ream of paper with official notes that say absolutely nothing. That's exactly what this is. Vicente frowned. That's the hard part. I'll admit it is, Correa said. But if it were easy, you wouldn't have come to me for advice. Go with that, and tell me how it turns out. Vicente nodded, but then added, on the other hand, Clara keeps pushing me about her cousin. Correa raised an eyebrow. She wants you to marry her? No, Vicente said quickly. But she's so invested in her cousin's happiness that I'm afraid to tell her the truth. Don't tell her anything, Correa advised. Women, they tend to complicate things. She might do something rash. The two men walked together toward Rua do Paseo, and when they reached Vicente's building, Correa joined him for tea. Inside, Clara asked how Delfina was, and what had come from the visit. Vicente was careful in his reply. He said that Delfina's illness seemed more imagined than real. As for her feelings toward him, he doubted they were as serious as people thought. Most likely, he said, it was just a passing fancy. Correa, ever the joker, played the part of a wise old friend and made a few light jokes about young women and their obsession with marriage. With that, the night ended, and so did the chapter. Vicente felt a strange mix of pride and frustration. Clara's indifference hurt his ego, but at the same time, he found it almost admirable. These two conflicting feelings became his greatest strength against Clara's charm, against the guilt he felt for her sadness, and even against Captain Correa's constant pushing. Did Clara know this? Probably. The idea of losing Vicente never truly upset her, as distant as the North Pole is from the South. One night, just for fun, Vicente said to Clara, "You know what, Clara? I think I'll marry my cousin." Clara turned pale. When Vicente saw 2 tears forming in her eyes, he kissed them away, and everything ended as happily as in a comedy. Still, Correa had his doubts. He once told Vicente straight, "I don't know, my friend. I think you might actually end up marrying her." "No," Vicente replied. "That's settled. I won't get married. And besides, how could I leave Clara alone like that? She needs me." "It's true that's a big issue," Correa said. "But who can control the heart? Your cousin is incredibly beautiful. I saw her the other day when I passed by her house. Even her illness gives her a kind of charm. Do you really think I can keep seeing her and stay cold?" Vicente asked. "I doubt it," Correa replied. "No one can resist a beautiful girl." "And your cousin? What eyes she has!" Vicente argued with all of his friend's worries, but deep down, every word only made him feel closer to Clara. It wasn't that he didn't see Delfina's beauty. One night, after staying at her house until nearly 11, he left thinking to himself, "What a shame I'm not free. Delfina would make a perfect wife." Vicente used to say things like, "What soul, what beauty, what tenderness and charm. whenever he talked to Clara about his cousin Delfina. But one day, whether to tease Clara or for some other reason, he stopped speaking that way. A few days later, he stopped mentioning Delfina's name altogether. The truth was simple enough for readers to guess. The sick girl had begun to affect the young man's heart. It was only natural. Who could resist the charm of someone beautiful who also loved you and grew ill because of you? His pride noticed it first, and then his heart followed. Still, to his credit, as soon as Vicente realized this change in himself, he decided to stop seeing Captain Delfina's father so often. To him, it was a matter of honor he had to resist his cousin's charm. Clara could feel the change in Vicente. She noticed it in the way he spoke to her with extra tenderness and knew signs of affection when he came home. It was as if each time he left Delfina's house, he felt he had made a mistake and needed to make up for it. And he did so with honesty, because his love still belonged entirely to the first woman who had truly captured his heart, Clara. Meanwhile, Delfina was getting better and better every day. Within a month, she had fully recovered her health. The joy she had missed for so long returned to her completely. This was because Delfina truly believed she could marry her cousin. The way Vicente treated her only made her more certain of this hope, especially after she knew how much he loved her. The captain believed it too, and even brought it up in front of his daughter one day. "Vicente," the captain asked, "when will the big day be?" Delfina looked straight at the young man. Taken by surprise, afraid of how a refusal might hurt her, and not sure what to say, Vicente replied, "Maybe soon." The girl's heart raced with joy. Vicente didn't tell Clara what happened, but he told Correa, who gave a sly smile. "Why are you smiling?" Vicente asked him. "Because you told me you were going to marry her." "I don't believe that." "You'll see. I said that because I didn't know what else to say. I swear I can't marry my cousin. Do you want me to marry her?" "I don't care," Vicente said. "You said it like you did care." "Oh, come on, like what?" "Aren't you going to introduce me to them?" "Today, if you want." It's settled then. That night, Correa was introduced at the captain's house and was warmly welcomed. But Delfina didn't like him at all, and she was honest enough to tell her cousin. Let's be clear, Vicente was actually happy about her dislike. Still, he felt it would be unfair to tell Correa what she had said. But Correa, who had a sharp mind, came to Vicente the next day and said, "Your cousin doesn't like me." "Don't say that." "That's exactly what I'm saying." Vicente was impressed by his friend's cleverness. At the same time, he felt relieved because Correa seemed completely indifferent about it. In truth, Correa didn't care more about Delfina's dislike than he would care about the first shirt of Charlemagne, unless he was into historical curiosities. Correa was a strange man. He seemed to have no soul, no feelings at all. And yet, Vicente had seen real loyalty in him. There are people like that, capable of helping others without warmth or emotion, without any of those open displays of feeling that only the greatest hearts can show. Love isn't a prisoner locked in a tower. Its nature is to fly, to spread, to share its joy with the whole world, like birds in the forest singing to every echo they hear. Captain Vicente felt a quiet happiness growing inside him. Day by day, Clara was getting better, and though her heart still belonged to Correa, Vicente could see that his presence no longer left her cold. The boy's heart is starting to bite, the old man said to himself. He was so sure of what he saw that he began to imagine the wedding date of Vicente and Delfina. That, of course, meant placing too much faith in the future. And yet, in his own heart, Vicente had sworn he would never marry his cousin. Still, the truth was that he now felt a strange sadness when he wasn't at his uncle's house. Delfina, for her part, shared her father's confidence. But her reasons were different and stronger. She was beautiful, and she knew it. More than that, she understood how to hold on to a man's heart, not because anyone had taught her, but by instinct alone. In the city, Delfina had found a close friend, Julia, a young single woman like herself. To her, she told everything. Julia too had someone who loved her, Dr. Castriotti. But in her case, things were the other way around. Julia claimed not to care for him, though that might not have been entirely true. It's worth sharing 2 letters exchanged between these 2 young women, both so full of hope and certainty about their futures. The first was written by Delfina. It read, "My dearest, I dreamed of him last night. I dreamed we were married, and I must confess I felt such joy in that dream. Sadly, it was just a dream. Still, both I and my father believe that this will all end the same way, with me marrying my cousin. He always comes here every night, and sometimes during the day too. We talk a lot, but I don't say much. Prefer to listen to him. Yesterday something happened. We were alone, and for a while, neither of us said anything. Then, after a moment, Vicente sighed. I asked him, 'Where did that sigh go?' He replied, 'Nowhere.' I told him I thought it might have gone somewhere. He said, 'I don't even know if I sighed.' Imagine that scene, pretending not to remember. We left it at that, but I'm almost sure that sigh was meant for me. What do you think? Yours, Delfina." Julia didn't take long to answer. Her letter read, "You're still so silly, Delfina. Why do you care about your cousin's sighs or his love life? Just do as I do with Castriotto. He keeps sighing, hoping I will love him, while I keep sighing just to get rid of him. There's nothing better than being single, my dear. That's freedom. These men, once they get married, behave terribly, and we women are the ones who suffer. I've seen enough examples to know. You know the saying, when you see your neighbor's beard on fire, you put your own in water. Well, I already did that. Of course, if my father insists I marry Dr. Castriotto, I won't have much choice but to agree. But only under one condition, that he never writes a single line again. Did you know? Castriotto has become a writer. Is now trying to be a novelist. Sometimes he comes over with bundles of paper and reads all of it out loud in the living room. It's terribly boring, except for my father, who thinks he has a great talent. Maybe he is, I believe he is, but when it comes to writing, I'd rather read Alexandre Dumas any day. Come over for dinner on Sunday. Well, dance. Yours, Julia." Julia's letter shows how light-hearted and playful she really is. She treats life as a joke and never takes things seriously. Poor Castriotto would be making a big mistake if he ever married her. Unless, of course, he was the foolish one all along. something we might find out more clearly in the chapters to come. On Sunday, everyone gathered at Julia's house for dinner. The family of Captain Ferreira, Vicente, and Correa. But Correa left right after dinner, saying he wasn't feeling well. The father of Julia was an old man, well-dressed, sociable, and warm. But he had little education and no refined taste. That's why he truly believed in Castriotto's talent. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room, and the conversation was cheerful, full of the day's events. The captain told jokes, Delfina talked with Vicente, and Castriotto sighed quietly in a corner. Julia moved between the groups, happy and carefree, not even noticing her suitor. Suddenly, Alvarenga Julia's friend's father spoke loudly to Castriotto. "Doctor, it's time. Let's get to the story." Castriotto stood up. "Dr. Castriotto," Alvarenga continued, "will treat us to a reading of his new novel. He is a great talent, Captain. His stories are magnificent." "What a bore," said Julia, walking over to Delfina and Vicente. "Look, he really loves you," Delfina whispered. "I don't care one bit." "You really are that cruel?" Vicente asked. "Oh yes. Especially with boring people." "Don't tease, my lady," Vicente said with a smile. Meanwhile, Castriotto reached into his pocket and pulled out a bundle of papers. Julia let out a deep sigh. Her aunt, who loved Castriotto's stories more than anything, smiled happily. Alvarenga took a pinch of snuff and asked Castriotto to sit in a place where everyone could hear him clearly. There was a loud shuffle of chairs, dresses, and shoes. Julia, very unhappy, couldn't find a good seat and kept moving around. Finally, she sat and whispered to Delfina. "Just wait. I'll fix this." Everyone settled in. Castriotto unrolled his pages, an action that made Vicente shiver. "What is the title of this new story?" Alvarenga asked. "It's called The First Loves of a Young Man or Fates Written." "How lovely," Julia said with a mocking smile. Castriotto didn't catch the sarcasm and gave a grateful nod. Then he cleared his throat and began reading. "I woke up early that morning. My servant brought me a small, nicely sealed note to my bed. It smelled of vanilla. Oliveira had sent the note. Did you think it was from a lady? No, it came from my friend Oliveira. Before I could recognize his handwriting, I could already smell the scent of the paper." The message read, "Tonight's dinner is postponed at its move to Thursday. But don't cry, we've got something better. My uncle, the judge, is hosting a small gathering tonight and insists you come spend the evening with us. I've told him so much about you that he's really eager to meet you. We're counting on you. See you soon. Oliveira." I was 20 years old back then. At that age, you don't argue about fun, you just accept it, no matter the form. This party was a fair trade for the dinner. Of course, there was something special about the dinner that had caught my interest. Curiosity. Until then, I had only made short visits to that famous place, arriving in the morning and leaving by afternoon, like a tourist. Sometimes I reversed the schedule, but how could that compare to truly knowing such a big world and meeting such varied people, aside from that childish curiosity? The dinner wasn't worth more to me than this gathering. I got dressed that night and headed to the judge's house, located on Rua dos Invalidos. There weren't many guests. The event clearly had an intimate feel. The young women were all around 20, elegant and pretty. There were a few young men and only a handful of older people, most of whom were somehow related to the judge. Oliveira was waiting for me anxiously, even though it wasn't very late yet. When he saw me come in with a smile, he said, "Bravo! I thought you'd be upset." "Why?" "Because of the dinner being postponed." "Oh, come on." Oliveira took me straight to the judge. The old man was kind, the kind of person whose calm youth was visible even in his old age. He shook my hands warmly and told me that his nephew had spoken about me in a way that had truly sparked his curiosity. "Why?" I asked, smiling. "Because I can tell you're a young man," he said. I must admit, I didn't understand that phrase at the time, though I would have understood it later. Still, I always felt the old man had paid me a compliment, and I thanked him with a nod. I was standing near the window when the judge offered me his arm. "Let me introduce you to the young ladies," he said, and led me across the room. First to his daughters, then to the other women gathered there. After the last introduction, he turned to his nephew, who had been watching nearby. "There's still one missing," the judge said. "Helena's not here yet," Oliveira replied. "She's late. Maybe she won't come at all." But she did come, half an hour later, leaning on the arm of a short, bald man. He was her father. We later learned that her delay was because her father had been away. He was a juror, and that day he had sat in on the trial of a famous fraud case. Once the judge introduced me to both father and daughter, I let the older man tell his story to the judge. I walked away to join Oliveira and Helena, who had moved into a smaller room where a few other girls were chatting and doing small, not very important things. Oliveira smelled like vanilla. It was in his hair, on his handkerchief, even on his hands. I wouldn't be surprised if he had somehow put it into his words too. As I approached, I caught them in the middle of a conversation about favorite scents. He was saying that vanilla was the best scent in the world. A cousin of his had argued for violet. When I joined them, I said clearly that I preferred sandalwood. Helena didn't say anything at first. So I asked her directly what she thought of our little debate. "For my part," she said, smiling, "I like all perfumes. I think they're all good." She said this with a smile, and I listened with a smile too, though I must admit I didn't like her answer very much. It seemed to me that she didn't really care for that kind of talk. That thought hurt my pride a little, and I felt the need to defend my point more strongly. Sandalwood naturally led me to speak of the East, and I believe I said some beautiful things, because my listeners were kind enough to interrupt me with signs of pleasure. Helena listened to me in silence, and just as I finished speaking, the piano began the prelude to a quadrille. The only sign of approval she gave was turning to Oliveira and saying, "That's ours." Oliveira then turned to me and said, "You're my partner." I went to check on a couple, and the dance began. Then, the reading of the novel was interrupted. Julia had a nervous fit that lasted a few minutes. When she came to, she looked pale and even more charming than usual. Castriotto, who as the author would normally be upset by the interruption, forgave it because it was Julia. When Julia finally felt better, everyone was relieved. As Delfina went to hug her, Julia whispered in her ear, "That wasn't a real attack. I just wanted to stop the reading," Vicente overheard Julia's words. "That was very cruel," he said to her. "You don't repay someone's love like that." "Then how should I do it?" she asked, looking at him. Vicente didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at Delfina, who at that moment was also looking at him. That look sealed everything. Vicente used to tell Clara everything that happened in his life. But, little by little, he stopped sharing what went on at his uncle's house. At first, Clara didn't notice. But the silence stretched on, and suspicion crept into her heart. When she still asked about Vicente's romance with his cousin, he would tell her not to think about it, but never said more. Clara became more and more suspicious. And she had reason to. Vicente's affection had changed. He was absent more often. Some days he left at 7 in the morning, and didn't return until 1 at night. In Clara's mind, the truth grew clear. Vicente's love for her was fading. That truth became certain one night when Correa showed up. "I already knew Vicente wasn't here," he said as he walked in. Clara turned the pages of the book she had been reading when Correa walked into the room. "It's true," she said. "He must be at his uncle's house." Then she sat down. There was a pause. Clara broke the silence. "I feel sorry for Vicente's cousin," she said. "Why?" Correa asked. "Because of that love of hers. She'll get a good reward for it." "Don't make fun of her," Clara replied. "I'm not making fun. I just think she'll be rewarded, because she'll win. Vicente will marry sooner or later." "And you think it will be her?" "Unless it's me." Clara turned pale. "But what do you expect from all this, Clara?" Correa asked. "Is it easy to resist being loved by a pretty girl and seeing her every day?" "But why didn't he tell me this himself?" Clara asked, her voice trembling with tears. "Oh, poor thing," Correa exclaimed. "Only God knows how much it must be costing him." Correa went on like this, speaking as all schemers do. He ended with the usual request. "Please don't tell him I told you this." "I won't," Clara answered. And in fact, she said nothing to Vicente. But when he arrived, he noticed something different about her. I say noticed, because that's exactly how she was, though he barely paid attention. His indifference was the cruelest blow of all. In Clara's mind, her love story had reached its final chapter. Meanwhile, as Vicente began a new romance, he didn't even feel guilty for forgetting the girl who had filled the early days of his youth with happiness. Such is the selfishness of the human heart. The law is cruel. Love is a feeling that wants everything for itself. It can inspire great sacrifices, but also deep betrayals. Now Clara understood that. She had believed her happiness would last forever. Now, she saw clearly that nothing human is eternal. It's important to note that these first moments of disappointment happened before the scene at Julia's house, and even before the meaningful look exchanged between Vicente and Delfina. That one look was the true beginning of their love, the real starting point of the story between the two cousins. Clara seemed at peace with her fate when all this happened. After weeks of sadness, she had returned to her cheerful self, just like before. Vicente hadn't noticed her sadness, but he did notice her joy. Let someone else try to explain the change. The truth was, only when her happiness came back did he realize she had been melancholy. Why had she suddenly grown sad? And why had she become so cheerful again? The sadness, Vicente thought, was easy enough to understand. It must have come from his long absences. But this sudden joy, he hadn't changed his behavior. In fact, he had started to fall truly in love with someone else. So what had caused her to change again? He decided to ask Clara. Or rather, he tried to feel her out. "You seem very happy lately," he said one morning as he arrived for breakfast. "And why shouldn't I be?" she replied. "Do you have a reason?" "What kind of question is that? If I have no reason to be sad, then of course, I'm happy. Isn't that normal?" But her answer didn't satisfy him. He wondered if something outside their home had brought this change. Something new. What could it be? Even though he loved his cousin, jealousy crept into his heart. Yet Vicente was not a man who could make decisions on his own. He was weak, unsure. So he turned to his friend Correa and told him everything. Correa listened and then gave his advice plainly. If you suspect anything, don't let her out of your sight. Don't let yourself be fooled. But to do that, you must stop spending so much time away. That's all. That's impossible, Vicente said. When are you getting married? Correa asked. Vicente smiled but said nothing. That same night, Captain Lemos spoke to his nephew. He said that if Vicente truly loved Delfina, the captain believed he did, then it was time to end things with Clara. Vicente blushed but did not argue. Break up with Clara. The idea had never crossed his mind, though it made perfect sense. At that moment, a deep inner battle began inside him. He started to understand that bonds formed over many years are not easily broken. Vicente walked through the streets slowly, lost in thought. I should do it, he told himself. But do I have the strength? And what about her? Poor thing. Thinking about it, he decided to go home early. Wanting to surprise Clara, he entered the living room quietly, stepping softly. Clara was sitting on the couch, reading a letter that was open on top of a book. When she saw him, she jumped a little and quickly closed the book, hiding the letter inside. Vicente turned pale. But Clara greeted him with a warm smile. She looked so innocent that Vicente thought he should act normal. He smiled back, trying to seem cheerful. They both laughed, but neither of them stopped looking at the closed book on the table. Vicente wanted to test her. He placed his hand over the book and stared at her. Clara turned pale. There was no doubt now. What's wrong? Vicente asked. Nothing, she said. A sudden headache. Can you bring me some cologne from my dresser? Vicente stood up. Without taking his hand off the book, he walked to the dresser to get the cologne. A few minutes later, Clara said she was feeling better. Even though it wasn't necessary, Vicente offered to take the bottle back to the dresser. When he reached the dresser, he opened the book, took out the letter, and put it in his pocket. Then he returned to the living room and placed the book back on the table. Clara seemed to relax. But when she opened the book again, the letter was gone. Vicente, she said, did you take a paper that was here? He hesitated. Her boldness surprised him. Yes, he said, pulling the letter from his pocket. I took it. I admit I was curious. I wanted to see what you were reading so carefully. He unfolded the letter and read it. It was a love letter, but the handwriting was clearly disguised. What do you think? Clara asked. Do you recognize the handwriting? No, Vicente said. I don't know who wrote it. They just delivered it to me, Clara said. Isn't it funny? Whoever wrote this must be quite a character. Vicente didn't answer, but the doubt remained, just like before. Vicente had always been the kind of guy who thought he understood his own heart. But lately, he wasn't so sure. He was practically engaged to Delfina, the girl everyone said was perfect for him. And yet, here he was, jealous of Clara. Not jealous in the usual way, no, this was different. It felt like something deeper, something confusing. Love, or whatever he felt for Delfina, had moved to the back of his mind. What mattered now was a strange sense of insult, a feeling that something had been taken from him. Something he couldn't even name. Because of that, he started to pull away. He told himself it was just for a while. But soon, he wasn't visiting his uncle's house as often. He stopped showing up when Delfina expected him. The silence grew, and so did the questions. Captain Delfina's father noticed right away. He asked Correa, the man who seemed to always be around, what had happened to Vicente. Why had he stopped coming? I don't know, Correa said each time. Sometimes he just shook his head. Delfina also turned to Correa. She trusted him. He was Vicente's best friend after all. She asked if something was wrong. Correa would smile, or say just a word or two. Never too much. He knew how to keep quiet when he needed to. But when Delfina asked him to do something important like talk to Vicente, maybe convince him to come back, always said yes. And somehow he made it look easy. Because of that, Delfina began to see Correa in a new light. He wasn't just Vicente's friend anymore. He was someone she could count on. Someone who was always there. More than Vicente, at least lately. So it made sense that she talked to Correa more. He was kind, he listened, and he never seemed to judge her. Besides him, only Julian knew the secrets of Delfina's heart. Her father? He knew some things, but not everything. Julia, who had a sharp tongue and a habit of saying what others wouldn't, once looked at Delfina and said, "You really love your cousin that much?" Delfina blinked. "Why do you ask that?" "Because he barely shows up," Julia said. "He's always missing." "Well," Delfina replied, "he must be busy." "But what does that matter? I know he loves me." "I don't believe you," Julia said. "If he really loved you, he wouldn't stay away. He'd be here, trying to guess what you want before you even say it. He'd obey you like Correa does." "Correa?" Delfina asked, surprised. "Yes," Julia said. "Have you ever seen a man more attentive? If someone didn't know better, they'd think he was the groom, not that ghost named Vicente." "Why don't you marry Correa instead?" "Don't be silly," Delfina said, crossing herself. "That's not even funny." Delfina looked at him, confused. "Why not? Is he repulsive?" "No," Correa replied. "As a fine young man. But But what? I love the other one. Correa shook his head gently. That kind of love, when the other person doesn't care about you, is foolish. That night, when Correa arrived at the captain's house, the first thing he said was that Vicente wouldn't be coming. Delfina's face fell. She tried to hide her disappointment, but Correa noticed. He treated her with care, spoke kindly, and did everything he could to cheer her up. It was then that she remembered what Julia had told her. Now that she thought about it, there was something in the way Correa acted his attention, his concern that stood in sharp contrast to Vicente's absence and strange behavior. Who knows, Delfina thought. Maybe he really loves me. She must have been completely lost in her feelings for Vicente not to see it before. If Correa truly loved her, then yes, she had been blind. But maybe she wasn't so blind after all, because after 2 days of thinking it over, she became convinced that he did. It's nearly impossible for a woman like Delfina to hate a man just because he loves her. That's not a crime, it's something you forgive. And she forgave him. But forgiveness isn't enough, Julia said when Delfina told her about Correa. Then what else is needed? Delfina asked. You have to love him back. Are you serious? You're talking nonsense. Meanwhile, Vicente kept visiting his uncle's house, but he always seemed sad and distracted. At home he was the same. He missed Rome when he was in Tiber, and Tibur when he was in Rome. His worries, his absent-mindedness, his long disappearance, each of these things, made Delfina grow colder toward him. She had imagined a different cousin, someone kind and steady. But the one she got was unpredictable, always lost in thought, forgetful, and never really present. Beside him, Correa was always there, attentive, gentle, and always trying to understand what she was feeling. The comparison was unfair. In the end, after just 2 months, a powerful romance had begun between Correa and Delfina. Vicente and Clara's relationship had taken a strange turn, and it would be hard to explain. A girl who once seemed to burn with love for one man had now turned her heart toward another. That's just how it happened. I'm only telling the story as it was, lived by people I know, no changes, no omissions. So, what exactly went on between Vicente and Clara? Vicente had no real proof to back up his suspicions, but they kept growing inside him. Every time Clara showed him affection, instead of calming him, it made him more certain she was hiding something. When he met Correa, the conversation always went the same way. Correa would ask, "And how is Clara?" "She's fine," Vicente would say. "Are things going well between you two?" So. Still suspicious?" "I'm afraid so." Correa would sigh and say, "That's just how women are." He would squeeze Vicente's hand like a man offering comfort at a funeral, and then leave. Vicente was kind, loving, and gentle when it came to love. But jealousy made him cruel. Clara was starting to feel it. She used to be met with warmth and affection, but now Vicente spoke to her with harsh, unkind words. Every move she made seemed to raise doubts in him. A smile at the window, a message sent to a friend, even the way she read a letter, everything looked like a sign of another love, one that had nothing to do with him. Over time, his behavior made Clara's feelings for him grow colder. Still, part of her might have been happy about his jealousy. It could mean he had finally stopped loving his cousin. But there was one big detail in this story that made everything worse. The letter, the famous letter Clara was reading the night Vicente walked in unexpected lies. That letter was a love letter. And it wasn't the only one. More had come, despite Vicente's constant watch. Clara now felt tied to someone else in the same way she had once been tied to Vicente. As for Vicente, he had only Correa to talk to about his pain. That night, Correa could always be found at Captain Ferreira's house. So often did Vicente go there that his only reason for visiting became seeing Correa. He didn't even try to hide it. Some nights, Vicente would arrive just to talk with Correa for a solid half hour, then leave soon after. Correa's advice to Delfina was clear. They needed to be more careful than ever. Captain Ferreira began to notice things. He saw how Vicente's visits had become short and rare, while Correa's had grown longer and more frequent. The old man loved his nephew deeply, and had hoped to help him by giving in to his daughter's wishes. But once he realized Delfina and Correa were in love, he decided to support them, hoping to speed up a marriage that would bring many blessings, including bringing him back to the farm. Meanwhile, Julia spoke on behalf of the couple. The captain, who truly liked her, promised to give her anything she asked for. And so, the love between Correa and Delfina became official. One night, Correa asked Delfina directly, "Can I go to your father and ask for your hand?" She looked at him and said, "Yes." When Julia heard the news, she clapped her hands in joy. "But why are you so happy now?" Delfina asked, "when you weren't happy when I was going to marry Vicente?" "Because he begged for your love," Julia replied, "and it was you who begged for his." "Only because of that?" "Only. You're such a child. And proof of that is I'm ready to let Castriotto propose to me. Has begged enough." That's exactly what Julia did. And I leave it to the reader's imagination to picture how delighted the ever-productive novelist was. "Oh," he said, clapping his hands. "This will give me material for some beautiful pages." No, Julia interrupted. "You'll marry me only if you stop writing novels." "But it's my calling," Castriotto protested. "Oh, you love very well," she said, "but you write very badly." And so, the matter was settled. Castriotto proposed to Julia, and she accepted at once. That day our novelist skipped dinner entirely. 8. You might have already noticed Correa's strange and confusing behavior. Sometimes he encouraged Delfina and Vicente's romance. Other times he told his friend not to lose sight of Clara. When he was with Clara, he planted seeds of doubt in her mind. In the end, whether on purpose or not, he made Delfina fall in love with him. One fine day he decided to go ask her father for her hand in marriage. I could skip explaining why Correa acted this way. Wasn't Vicente his friend? And isn't that what friends are for? Still, it's better to explain the two main reasons. The first was Delfina's money. She was the only heir of Captain Ferreira. The second reason was something Vicente had done to Correa, an offense, yes, but not a serious one like a matter of honor. It was just a blow to Correa's pride. Still, he never forgave Vicente. And now, the moment had come to get his revenge. When Correa asked the captain for Delfina's hand, the old man didn't seem surprised. He had guessed their feelings for each other. Since his daughter was ready to marry someone else, he gave up on his nephew's chances that, to be honest, never interested him much anyway. She likes you, the captain told Correa. I'm not sure. She does. I know her. As for me, I have no objections. Get married and be happy. Still, just to follow tradition, he called his daughter and told her about Correa's proposal. Delfina looked down. It was the expected reaction and whispered a yes so softly it didn't seem to come from her heart at all. It sounded like it came from somewhere else. My dear son-in-law, said the captain, speaking like a wise man, the piece of bread was saved for the one who would eat it. I came to Rio de Janeiro so Delfina could marry Vicente, and now I'll return to the countryside with a son-in-law I never expected or even knew. I say this because I'm going back to my farm, and I can't live without Delfina. I'll go with you, Correa replied. Captain Soares thought it best to let Vicente know about his daughter's upcoming wedding. Still, he understood how sensitive the matter could be, not because he believed it would deeply wound Vicente's heart, which had already moved past a brief infatuation, but because it might bruise his pride. Vicente hadn't shown up in 3 days. I was going to write to you, the captain said. Why? Vicente asked. To tell you something that might surprise you, the captain replied. What is it? Delfina is getting married. My cousin? Yes. A short silence followed. The news hit Vicente hard. Even though he had fallen for Clara, a part of him still cared for Delfina. The old man waited for a reaction, but when none came, he went on, It's true. The wedding is in 2 months. Who's the groom? Vicente asked. Correa. At that moment, Vicente realized what had been happening. He had suspected something days before, when he noticed certain glances exchanged between Delfina and Correa at a dinner. But hearing it from his uncle shook him deeply. A mix of sadness and pride swelled inside him. The conversation ended there. Vicente left. It wasn't hard to understand how he felt. As he walked out of his uncle's house, his mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. He imagined confronting his rival, demanding answers from Delfina, or even stopping the wedding. Every idea was more dramatic than the last. But deep down, he knew silence was the only wise choice. Anything else would seem foolish. Still, anger and hurt made him act before he could think. Later that evening, he returned home, hoping to find comfort, but Clara was not there to offer it. In fact, she had grown colder and more distant by the day. She no longer shared in his joys or cared for his sorrows. That night, Vicente fell into a deep sadness. Meanwhile, preparations for the wedding continued. Vicente decided he would not visit his uncle's house again, nor would he seek out Correa, the man now set to marry the woman he once loved. Vicente got the letter from Correa 8 days after he officially heard about Delfina's wedding. He read every word in shock. Dear Vicente, I've been hesitant to tell you this, even though you probably already know. In marrying your cousin. I would never have thought of doing something like this if I hadn't seen that you, after a short flirtation, had become indifferent to the girl's fate. It's clear that she no longer matters to you. The fact that you didn't love her opened the door for my own heart, which had been quietly touched for some time. We love each other, and the wedding will happen in 50 days. I hope you approve. I was already your friend, now I'll become your relative. Of course, this wasn't necessary to make our friendship stronger. Yours, Correa. Vicente read the letter in disbelief. Never before had he seen such shameless hypocrisy. He didn't reply. He thought, by not answering, hell understand my contempt. Maybe hell come looking for an explanation. But Vicente was wrong. Correa didn't want an explanation, and he didn't expect a reply. That letter wasn't just hypocritical, it was cruel. Correa wanted to hurt his friend deeply. Vicente waited in vain for a visit from Correa. His silence only made Vicente angrier. On top of that, things with Clara were getting worse. They had moved from small arguments to big fights, and their last fight had been especially serious. Finally, the day of Delfina's wedding arrived. Coincidentally, Julia had also chosen that same day for her own marriage. Both weddings took place in the same church. These unusual circumstances brought Correa and Castriotto closer together. As the two grooms, they worked together to prepare for the double celebration, where they were the main characters. The night before the wedding, Castriotto stayed at Correa's house. "Let's talk about our brides," Correa said to the writer. "Sounds good to me," Castriotto replied. Castriotto showed up right at 10 o'clock, right after leaving Alvarenga's house, where he had said goodbye to his girlfriend for the last time. The next day, he would greet her not as a lover, but as his fiancée. "So tomorrow, we'll be married," said Correa. "That's right," Castriotto replied. "It still feels like a dream." "Same here. I've been trying to win that girl for 6 months and never thought I'd get anywhere." "You moved fast." "I wasn't that lucky, even with all my effort." "It's true. We fell in love quickly. And deeply. Want to know what I think? There's something strange about going to bed a single man and waking up engaged. What do you think?" "That's true," Castriotto said quietly. "What's wrong, my friend?" Correa asked. "You seem troubled. You look deep in thought." After a pause, Castriotto finally answered, "I'll tell you. My fiancée agreed to marry me, but with one condition." "A condition?" "A painful one." "My God, what could it be?" "She made me promise never to write another novel." "Oh. Well, if the bride is worth it, the condition must be too," Correa said, holding back a laugh. "She's worth it," Castriotto replied. "That's why I accepted." "And what about later? After the wedding?" "No. I accepted the condition, and I'll keep it. That's why, at this important moment when I'm saying goodbye to my bachelor life, I want to read you my last novel." With that, Castriotto pulled a huge roll of paper from his pocket. The sight of it made Correa go pale. It was already 11 o'clock. Reading that whole thing would take no less than 2 hours. Correa found himself in one of those moments in life when a man needs all the courage he can find. But what good was courage when faced with a bad writer who insisted on reading his work out loud? Castriotto unrolled the manuscript and said, "The title of this story is The Dangers of Love, or The Mysterious House." Correa couldn't escape this fate. Still, to survive it, he asked Castriotto's permission to get comfortable and lie down on the sofa. Once settled, he gave Castriotto the go-ahead to begin. The novelist coughed and began reading the story. When he finished the first chapter, he turned to Correa and asked, What do you think of this chapter? Excellent, Correa replied. The second chapter started with excitement. What do you think of this one? No answer. Castriota walked over to the guest. He was fast asleep. Wretched man, the novelist muttered, and went to lie on Correa's bed. He knew how. The next day was the big day. For the newlyweds, the sun rose brighter than ever. But for Vicente, sunlight had never felt more mocking and cruel. Correa's joy only deepened Vicente's bitterness and made the rival's coldness feel even more cutting. As a kind of poor comfort, Clara seemed more cheerful and sweet than usual. She woke up singing and laughing. Her mood helped lighten Vicente's sadness a little. He decided not to leave the house that day and spend all his time with Clara. But suddenly, it seemed to him that her happiness was an insult to his pain. He imagined she was laughing at him. He told her so. Clara heard the accusation with pride and silence. Then, with a cold smile, she said, "You're strange." Vicente regretted his words. He wanted to apologize, to take back the accusation, but that would only make the situation more ridiculous. He chose to stay quiet. After all, he thought, why should I care about this wedding? I didn't get married because I didn't want to. Then he threw himself onto a book, trying to read. He didn't read. He flipped pages and moved his eyes without focus. He closed the book. He lit 2 cigars and put them out right away. He picked up another book and lit another cigar. He would have repeated the same act again if lunch hadn't arrived to distract him. At lunch, he acted cheerful. "Did you know I have a great appetite today?" he said to Clara. "Really?" "Yes." "Why?" "How should I know? Because I'm happy." "Oh." "I'm happy," Vicente went on, "because after so much trouble, I'm right here with you, and I belong to no one but you." Clara smiled. "Doubts?" he asked. "No, none at all," she replied. Vicente went on, "I admit I almost gave in to my uncle for a while. He kept pushing me to marry that clumsy cousin of mine. Luckily, she fell for someone else. Now I'm free." Clara looked at him calmly. "Careful, you'll tear the napkin." And indeed, Vicente had pulled the napkin hard without noticing. His agitation stood in sharp contrast to Clara's quietness, and it was this calm of hers, slightly amusing, almost teasing, that made him even more upset. The day went on like that. After dinner, Vicente said he was going to bed. "Sleep?" Clara said. "That'll make you feel worse." "Not at all. Look, go out for a walk instead. It's better for you." "You want me out of the house, is that it?" "If that's what you think, then stay." I was only joking. But Vicente couldn't wait to leave. As soon as he got outside, he started making all sorts of plans. At first, he thought of going to his uncle's house, but he quickly changed his mind, imagining how silly the scene would look. He decided instead to go to Botafogo. He was about to get into a carriage when the idea suddenly seemed too weak, not enough to match his mood. No, better yet, he'll go to the church. He'll watch the wedding and confront Correa. That scoundrel will pay me back one way or another. He turned toward the parish of Santo Antonio, but stopped halfway. What am I even going there for? Back and forth time passed like this. Later that night, he headed toward Rua dos Invalidos, where his uncle lived. From a distance, he saw the house was brightly lit. A wave of anger rose inside him. He raised his fist, grabbed the hat off a man walking by, and threw it into the street. "Crazy man!" the stranger shouted. Vicente, desperate to take out his anger on someone, turned sharply and asked, "Who did you call that?" "I called it to you," the man replied. Vicente grabbed him by the collar, ready to throw a punch, but a few people stepped in and pulled them apart. After things cooled down and some words were exchanged, Vicente walked on, only to find himself, without realizing it, standing in front of his uncle's house. The house was full of guests. Vicente spotted them from a distance, sitting side by side on a sofa, Correa and Delfina. The girl looked more beautiful than ever. He bit his lip so hard it started to bleed. He stood there watching the scene for a few moments, then walked away, lost in his own thoughts. Just as he began to move forward, the light from a street lamp hit him directly. Correa whispered softly to his bride, "That was my cousin just now." "Really?" she asked. "He came to see us." "He sees a happy couple," said the girl. "A very, very happy one," Correa added with a smile. The wedding celebration had been magnificent and lasted until late at night. Vicente didn't want to see or hear anything else. He turned and walked home. He felt sad, broken, and ashamed. The worst part was that he couldn't blame anyone else. He was the guilty one. He arrived home around 10 at night. Unlike usual, Clara wasn't waiting for him in the living room, although the lights were on. Vicente had come ready to fall at her feet and say, "I am yours forever, because you are the only woman who ever truly loved me." But she wasn't there. He went to her bedroom and didn't find her. He called out, but no one answered. He searched the entire house and saw no one. He returned to the living room and found a note. It read, "My dear, am not made to be a sister of charity for broken hearts. Live your life." Leave it to the reader's imagination to picture Vicente's rage. In one single moment, he had lost everything. 1 year later, the characters of this story were living very different lives. Correa, his wife, and her father were living on the farm, all of them happy. The captain was happy because his daughter was married. The daughter was happy because she loved her husband. And Correa was happy because he had finally gained the fortune he wanted, and in return, he had become a good husband. Julia and Castriote were also happy. In their marriage, the husband followed his wife's lead, and she ruled the house like a queen. The only escape he had was secretly writing novels and contributing to a small literary newspaper called The Sunflower. Vincent, for his part, had grown bitter and withdrawn. He judged the rule by its exceptions, so to speak, and blamed everyone else for his own mistakes. He wanted nothing more to do with friends or lovers. He worked at a trading firm, lived quietly, and kept to himself like a monk in solitude. Lately, people said he was planning to marry an old woman worth 200,000 rei. A friend ran into him and asked if the rumor was true. "It is," Vincent replied. "I believe the wedding will happen. But she's old. All the better. She's my best chance at happiness." Old women are unmatched in their loyalty, you know. What kind of loyalty are you talking about? The loyalty of ruin.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.